to form our work plan. And our work plan forms our components and our commitments, and then subsequently our reporting on how we accomplished what we said we were going to do way back in the TEP. Okay, so as you can see, the insect infestation was identified as the top priority. The long-term goal was to form a comprehensive climate change adaptation plan over a 5-year period. Okay, we were gathering information, and I will say that we are getting ready to redo our TEP. This is something that we've been working on for the last several years. So we gathered the information from many, many sources. We gathered information from our state partners, from our federal partners. I don't know if you've noticed, but climate change information has been very difficult to come by now. But we gathered all that information, we prioritized it and put it into mitigation strategies. If I were to go on and show you the next couple years, we've been working with our farmers, we've been working with San Bernardino County, Clark County, and Bullhead City. Fort Mojave Tribe sits in all 3 states. We sit in California, Arizona, and Nevada. So we worked with all of these different partners to form mitigation strategies, such as reducing our flood irrigation and replacing it with drip irrigation systems in populated areas. So that reduces the mosquito pools in the fields. We've had our farmers go out and put larvicide behind the flood irrigation gates to stop the mosquito larvae from growing into full-grown mosquitoes. So there's a lot of different things that we can do. We work with public health. We do trapping and testing of mosquitoes so that we can limit disease outbreak. So there's a lot of different things that we have done under, and this is all under the heading of climate change. There was a lot of things there that we could work with. So, and I think I probably did this way, way too fast, but so as a recap, your component is taken directly from your TEP. Your long-term component goal is taken directly from your TEP. Your measures are taken from the GAP guidebook, and your commitments are taken from the TEP, broken down into manageable steps with added detail on how you will accomplish the task. And your quarterly report tells you all where you are in accomplishing that task. And that's where you add all your details of what you did. And your commitments are where you add the details of what you want to do. So, questions. And I'm going to stop sharing this. And I know that a lot of you have questions. So, you can go ahead and either unmute yourself and ask a question, or you can type a question in the question box. Yep. Give me 1 second. Maybe. There you go. Did you have a specific question on that slide? I can't see when I have this up on the screen, I can't see the chat box. So if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, please feel free.
Christine, I can help monitor the chat box for you. Since you have your presentation up, I can keep an eye on that for you.
That would be great, because if they want me to keep going back and forth between slides, I can't see the chat box.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
Was there a specific question?
Nothing in the chat box yet, but I don't know if someone wants to unmute and maybe ask a question.
Hi, this is Terry from the Scotts Valley Band of Pomo Indians. I have a question.
Sure.
So it is time for us to do an update to our ETEP, and this will be the first one that I've done. What are your recommendations for who I should gather together besides, you know, maybe council members or other staff? Is there anyone that you said, oh, I wish we would have included them?
Our EPA's department is separated down. So our department does GAP. We have another person that actually does our water grants. So we pulled her in. Our cultural department, and I'll tell you, your cultural department is going to be really a good source because generally they have a lot of this information that you're going to need anyways. Your cultural department would be a lot of help. Our natural resources director, we pulled him in. Anybody that, it depends on what direction that you're going for in your TEP. I mean, if one of your concerns is wildfire, you might want to invite the fire chief. If one of your concerns is illegal dumping, you might want to invite the police chief or your refuse, the person that runs your refuse company. So it just kind of depends on what direction that you're going to. And when we were doing the TEP, I kind of broke it down into steps. Okay, we're going to talk about climate change, so we're going to invite this group of people. And we're going to talk about this issue, so we're going to invite this group of people. So you might want to break that down into steps, depending on what the topic that you're looking at is going to be. So whoever you would feel that are the subject matter experts in that field would be. And I even went and talked to, like, the Intertribal Council of Arizona had some information, and I pulled that information in and said, okay, this might be a good thing to take a look at. So, you know, look at your state partners, look at your federal partners. They'll all have a little bit to offer as you're working through your TEP. But the biggest thing to remember is you're going to have to form your work plan components and commitments from the TEP. So you want to make sure that your TEP is easily broken down into those commitments and the components and the commitments. I hope that
This is
helped.
Destiny Cooper. I was just going to say that Christine's point about including the cultural context at the individual tribes is a good point to make. The thing to remember is that when you're including that in your TEP, just make sure that you are being specific about how it applies. So we're not looking to know your guys' cultural side of things, but maybe, you know, having a reference in there about wanting to contend with water quality issues because of, and you can word it how you want. We have had tribes in Region 9 that have included specific sections regarding cultural impacts related to the environment. And when they do it in that way, we've had to tell them that they can't really get that chapter or that section of their TEP funded under GAP. But if you write it in such a manner that it actually hones in on the environmental piece instead of the cultural piece, then you can. So work with your project officers if you have questions about that, but realize that there's different ways of approaching it in terms of emphasis, and it completely depends on how individual tribes want to approach that. The other thing to remember is that we're going to be working on negotiating GAP work plans again in the starting next month. So for fiscal year 22, it's literally right around the corner. And part of that is actually going over ETEPs. So one of the things Christine very, very quickly breezed over was that what she covered is the content of the TEP, so the Tribal Environmental Plan. And that's one piece out of 4 total pieces of the EPA Tribal Environmental Plan. So her portion in here is very specific about that TEP portion and is only one piece of the ETEP piece. And when you guys are doing the calls for the next round of work plans, one of the pieces is going over the TEP. So that also may be another place where you can get ideas about what is it that you're going to keep from your existing ones, what is it that you may want to focus or hone in on for the next ones. And that might even help you strategize about who you need to be there.
There's a couple other things that I wanted to mention too. Just because your TEP is up for renegotiation doesn't mean that you can't add to or change your TEP in the interim of that 5-year period. I've had some things to my TEP because of focus. We had a new focus of something we wanted to work on, so that wasn't in my TEP. So I went back and added a section to my TEP. That is entirely possible. The other thing that is possible is you might not be done. You might not be done meeting your goals from your TEP in that 5-year period, because it depends on how detailed your TEP is. And some of those goals may not change. Some of those goals may stay there for a long, long period of time. So you may be leaving things in your TEP, eliminating things from your current TEP, or adding things to the TEP at any given time.
Hi, Christine, this is Kelly. It looks like you have another few questions in the chat box. I can just read them out to you.
Please, thank you.
One question is, this appears to be a response to climate change at a local level. What are the top contributors that tribes can identify and add to the discussions? Your thoughts?
Climate change, we see the wildfires right now. I can tell you that I live in Needles, California, and I haven't seen more than a couple of drops of rain since last October, maybe, almost a year. It's been a long time that we've had any rain. September, October, somewhere in there. We didn't have the monsoon season that we normally do. It's going to differ for every tribe what their effects on climate change are going to be. I know that I live in the Mojave Desert. We are seeing increasing temperatures every year. I mentioned specifically the mosquito program in here because each year our mosquito issue has gotten worse. And I'll share a story with you. I was at a public health forum and I had an entomologist from the CDC tell me that mosquitoes can't survive. They don't fly over 110 degrees. And I looked at him and said, really? And I had a picture, I had several pictures of my county counterparts and I were in a field trapping and testing for mosquitoes. And that same morning, at that same time, because the pictures were time stamped, we have a agricultural inspection station coming into, just outside of Needles, coming into Needles, and their thermometers were reading 130 degrees, and we were out in the field covered in mosquitoes at 130 degrees. And I showed him those series of pictures and he said, I stand corrected. The problem is our mosquitoes are adapting to the high heat. Humans, maybe not so much, but the mosquitoes are adapting to the high heat. So it's going to be very personalized to your area, and it's going to affect cultural issues. It's going to affect physical farming. It's going to affect a lot of different things. I will tell you that I was having a conversation with our cultural person, and I said, okay, what can we do? How can we form a mitigation strategy for the cultural sites that are breaking down because of climate change? And what do we do about that? And her answer to me, which I thought was very profound, was, we're not going to be able to save every cultural site. What we need to do is do outreach and education so our young people understand what these cultural sites are while they're still here and can pass along that knowledge. So mitigation strategies don't necessarily have to be, cut the trees down to cut a fire line. There's a lot of different ways you can write up mitigation strategies. Any other questions? I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you. There's
Really
one
kind of
more
personal.
question. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's really kind of personal to the tribe
Yeah,
as to what the impacts are.
there's one more question, and this may be better suited for an EPA folk, but they say, in the coming month, will project officers be available to review our TEPs with?
Yeah, I can answer that if that's okay, Christine.
Sure.
This is J.R. Herbst, and I work for EPA Region 9. And Ryan, the direct answer to your question is yes. After the conference, we'll be working with tribes to review ETEPs. So within the next few months, we'll be available, not just for one meeting. If there's multiple meetings that need to happen for ETEPs discussion, we're there to help out with the reviews. But it really helps us with the development of FY22 gap work. So I think, coming up here in the next couple months, we'll be setting up those meetings.
You might want to reach out to your project officer and find out when your TEP is up for renewal. Because like I know ours is, we were one of the first ones, and I know that they finished those TEPs and the ETEPs over a couple of year span. So it should be this year, next year, somewhere in there that most of us will have to look at our TEPs and figure out what needs to be revised, what's staying, what's going, what's being added, what's being taken away.
Thank you. That's all the questions that are in the chat for now. I'm not sure if anyone else has any questions they want to type in or unmute themselves and ask, but oh, it looks like another one just came in from Jill Ward. She asks, what happens with our ETEPs when we are not able to work on them? In other words, I was pulled off all work plans and ETEP work and placed as an emergency manager during COVID.
I'll let EPA answer that, and then I'll give you my perspective.
This is Destiny. So I'm one of the product officers in the GAP office in Region 9. And the reality is that we recognize, especially during COVID, that some of the folks that were otherwise working on GAP were pulled to do other things. There's all kinds of grant parameters to that, but in terms of the ETEP itself, so it doesn't have like a direct impact. It's not a negative impact that it would have. It may be reason or cause for the ETEPs to just be extended in terms of the time period that they cover. It also might mean that it, in terms of renewal or renewing it or coming up with a new one, it may just be simpler because you weren't able to get to everything within that period of time that it was previously determined. So it's not a negative impact because you guys have clear reason for the work in there to not have occurred. I hope that helps you, Jill.
All I have to say, Jill, is I empathize with you. I've been the incident commander for the COVID response for the Fort Mojave Indian Tribe since February. I empathize with you. I'm sure you're as tired as I am. Any other questions?
That's all I see for now.
Was that understandable, guys? Do you have a little bit of understanding on how all the pieces work together? I hope.
This is Destiny again. I am going to do a bit of a sales pitch for you, Christine. So on the EPA Region 9 webpage, if you guys go to the RTalk portion of the tribal section on the external Region 9 website, there's actually a link on there to example ETEPs, or I should say TEPs, sorry. So in that section, Fort Mojave's is actually one of the examples. So you'll see 4 different ways that you can lay it out. And I think the idea of this presentation was trying to help folks make the TEP as useful as possible. Every tribe has different reasons for how they structure it and why they structure it. So we tried to give you guys some examples from tribes that approved us posting it on there. You won't see Fort Mojave's actual name on it. I forget what we called Fort Mojave in there.
I don't remember. I know it's on there
Go
though.
ahead and kind of look on there. I think yours, Christine, is actually the shortest one on there.
I believe that it is because I did mine in kind of an outline format because I figured I'd fill it in with the commitments and the components and the work plans, but
Yeah, so people can feel free to use that as another way of learning more about how to do this.
my biggest goal was to show you how to make the connection between the GAP guidebook, the TEP, the ETEP, the TEP, the ETEP, and the work plan and reporting to make them all flow.
You have one more question. Oh, two more. They ask, can you provide a link for the example tips?
I just realized that as I finished talking, and I'm looking for it right now to post it in the chat.
Cool. Thank you, Destiny.
Great. One more question. Are tribes able to delay delivery of their TEP to EPA, or do they need to formally inform EPA?
That's another EPA question.
Well, since
See, John, why I told you you had to be on here? Or JR?
I'm here. Yeah, I'm thinking about that question because there's so many different circumstances, right? So it really depends on the particular situation. And, you know, I'm going to recommend checking with your GAP project officer to see what can happen here. Because if this is an ETEP update, you know, some of that work could potentially be done next year due to, you know, the unforeseen circumstances. But if this is a brand new ETEP, then it's a whole different kind of situation. So I think it really depends, Carolyn, on that particular circumstance and how we approach it. And, you know, your GAP project officer would be the best resource to help you navigate through that.
This one's for you, Christine. Ryan from Santa Rosa says, the PowerPoint is very useful as an example and template. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, thank you. There's my contact information. So if you come up with any other questions or you need just some support and help, how do I do this? There you go. You can take a picture of that and you'll have my contact information.
Maybe we'll do one last call for any questions. I'm not seeing anything new at the moment.
Here, I'll give you a PowerPoint tip. I was sitting in a class many years ago. I've been here for 14 years, just in case anybody wanted to know. But I was sitting in a class, and it was a class about how to design presentations for people with functional and access needs. And one of the things that the person said in the class, and I've never forgotten this, is that people with a sight impairment or a slight sight impairment have a much easier time seeing white lettering on black backgrounds than they do black lettering on white backgrounds. So if you notice, my whole presentation was a black background with white lettering. I've never forgotten that lesson. So there's a tip for you when you're putting together presentations.
Hi, this is Terry from Scotts Valley. Again, I got another quick question. I understand the difference of a TEP and an ETEP. But I'm curious if, Christine, if you have a different version of a TEP and an ETEP. Is there like a larger document before you go to the EPA with it?
No, there wasn't. I put together the TEP as an outline. You kind of have to look at our TEP. It was broken down into sections, but the whole TEP went to the EPA because it didn't have any sensitive information in there that I didn't want that wasn't shareable. Some tribes have sensitive information in there that they don't want shared, so they might pull out sections of their TEP and leave other parts not going to the EPA, which I understand, especially with the recent FOIA request. I kind of understand why that happens, but no, my whole TEP went to the EPA. but other tribes have not. So if Destiny, I don't know, were you able to find that link, Destiny?
I did. I've posted it in the chat. And
Okay, well, I can't
also
see
put in there.
I can't see the chat with my screen if I'm doing the screen share, so.
No, it's fine. I also put in there which one is Fort Mojave's example. And I think there's an example on there too that might help answer this question. Example 4 actually includes, well, it references a chapter about cultural resources. And what you'll see in that example is that that tribe took out that chapter before they gave it to EPA. So we know that the tribe's version has that chapter, but the agency didn't pay for that portion, yet that's what the tribe needed in order for it to really be useful for them. So there's another example to kind of, we wanted you guys to see how that might work. It's one way that you can handle that. That's example 4 on that link.
Thank you.
All right, I don't see any new questions. We got many people in here saying thank you and great job.
Thank you. Here, maybe I'll stop share so I can actually see the, now I can see the,
Yeah, and it does look like someone just asked. Stephanie said, from what I understand, the TEP
Yes.
is just the environmental tribal plan portion of the entire package that goes to EPA. And then once EPA adds their portion, AAL and RFIL, it becomes the ETEP.
that is correct. That is correct. So those pieces, you'll work with your project officer and you'll actually get it's been a long time. You'll get it back to kind of review, and then you work together to kind of put together a letter. So those are those pieces, the list and the letter, and those go together to become your ETEP. So the TEP is the actual tribal part of it that you put together and send to EPA. This is what we want to work on.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up the cover memo, and I see that being mentioned in the chat as well. So AIL is the areas of involvement. The RFIL is a regulated facilities list. And then there's the cover memo. So it's those 3 things that get added to the TEP to make it an ETEP.
Great. And you'll have a chance to go over those pieces with your project officer. You know, I noticed when we did my TEP the last time, and we're talking 5 years ago, but there was something on there that just didn't exist anymore. So we had to move that and take it off. And it happens. Anything else? Any further questions?
I'm not seeing any new questions.
Oh,
one more.
Looks like you're gonna get, oh.
Sorry. Deborah asks, what was RIFL again?
Destiny, I'm gonna let you take that because I'll screw it up.
So it's the RFIL, and it's the regulated facilities list. The I is kind of mute when we go to define it.
Which is why it always screws me up and I can't remember what it stands for.
So the easiest way for folks to remember it is just, it's the list of regulated facilities. The areas of involvement list, that's the AIL.
Those all come from the GAP guidance, section 4 of the GAP guidance for the requirements to make an ETEP. All 4 components need to come together to make the ETEP.
So the ETEP is a requirement of the GAP guidance, and it's a requirement to use the ETEP to form your work plans. I hope it was helpful.
All right, great job, Christine. I don't see any new questions for you.
All right, they get a couple minutes of their day back.
Okay, so
All right.
if anyone has no more questions for Christine, I'm going to go ahead and end the session. We did send out the new updated Zoom links for the meetings for the rest of the day, and we will be sending out another one tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that. But everything for today on the website is updated and ready to go. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I'm going to throw my email in the chat box. And thank you, Christine. I hope everyone has a great day. All right, Christine, I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting.
All right, thank you,
Good
everyone.
job. Thank you.